Welcome to Fly Tying Thursday for Project Healing Waters Omaha. Tonight we have a guest, and we're gonna do something a little different tonight. We're gonna do a tie off. We're gonna show two flies, kind of similar in construction in some ways, and we're gonna show two different fly tiers ways of tying those flies. So it's going to be interesting to see the different ways to represent these flies. The first one is the crackleback, and it's this fly right here. The original, so this is actually from the Feathercraft website. So I'm going to do a quote here. This isn't me talking. Ed Story was an Army veteran and a founder of Feathercraft fly fishing. In 1952, Ed created the FC Crackleback Dry Wooley, is what he called it. FC for Feathercraft, Crackleback Dry Wooley. The fly and the method to fish it was an instant success. Now fished worldwide, many will use nothing else. To fish this fly dry, you dress the hackles with floatant and fish it dead drift as a floating terrestrial in the surface film. If no hit near the end of the drift, jerk the fly beneath the surface and skip it across stream with the rod tip or strip it back to you. To fish it deep, use a full sinking line or a sinking leader system with a split shot on the tippet about 15 inches above the fly. Skip or strip the fly just off the stream or lake bottom and expect near instant success. So this is a fly I learned about long ago when I was first started tying flies. The Feathercraft catalog was black and white, had a lot of articles in it, and it had the recipe for this fly and a description, probably similar to what I read off the website. But the original material was dubbing, cream-colored dubbing. And when that material was no longer available, Ed used barbs cut from a cream-colored turkey wing feather for the body material. I've always, I've tied a lot of these over the years. I like it in orange, yellow, and red are my favorite colors to do it. And you're going to see a different color from Mick tonight. By the way, Mick Bretz, he's the program manager for St. Louis Project Healing Waters. And so we're both going to be tying this fly in different ways. I'm going to actually tie it different than what you're looking at right there. But you want to go to a certain point and then switch back and forth? Is that how you want to do it?
I figured I'll go to same view as you have, and then
Okay.
we could both kind of start, just kind of talk while we're doing it.
Okay.
My version of it is a little bit more materials, a little bit more durable, and it's called the Bennett Blue. It's a bit different on how to tie this, but I've had good success with it, and it's makes it a lot easier for your participants. If they want to start it, you might want to try starting this way and then kind of work them up to the way Mike's going to do it. So we'll get started. And basically right now I'm using UTC thread red 140 because I actually do like putting a couple hot spots on it on the front and back. And so I'm going to start a thread base down and work from front to back. And then once we get there, we'll continue on.
So Mick, why don't you go to where you have all your materials tied on, and then I'll tie my materials on, and then we'll go back to you, and
Okay.
You can finish off the fly. It's kind of a simple fly, so
Yeah, it's simple. And
that way we can comparison back and forth with the different methods.
Exactly, that works. So I will take this to the bend of the hook, maybe a little bit further, but then bring it back up. And I'm going to start tying in my materials right there. And it is the next material is, let me swap over to my other view so you could see it. Here we go. I'm using the Uni blue Mylar, and then I will be using my furnace hackle saddle. I'm actually almost through this one, but for instead of using the peacock, I use a Sharpie, and I just kind of color the back to give a little different change. But again, as I'm going for a little bit durable on this, so I will go back to wrong one. Go back to the fly. So what I will now put in is tie in my Mylar, where I'll just cut up a small section. Tie that in. And I will not take it all the way back because I do want to keep a little hot spot. So as you can see there, I'm going to keep a little red hot spot. Bring it up forward a little bit. I will now take my hackle, just strip off, and I will tie that in. And that's all I have for the materials. I will bring that back forward. And that's all my materials.
Okay. So I'm going to do this a little more. I'm not sure what dubbing he used originally. Like I said, the original material is no longer available. But what I'm going to use for this, since I have a really good color, is a really good cream colored. It's light Cahill in this super fine dubbing. Across the back, I'm just going to use strung peacock herl. And then for the hackle, I'm going to use as close to furnace as I have. It's got a little bit of a black center, but it's a good color. And it's in the Whiting Farms 100 packs, they call them. That's a good way to get inexpensive, those real long genetic saddle hackles to use for where you can probably tie about 5 or 6 flies off of each hackle. So I'll switch back to the hook. And I'm doing this in a size 12. I'm going to start the thread on the hook about an eye length back. There's not a lot of materials on this, so it's not a big problem to crowd the eye. That off. And then back at the end of the shank, which is about one more turn, about right in there, I'm going to tie in my hackle at this point, which again, if I can pick it up, I'm going to use a one of these genetic hackles, and I'm going to tie it in with leaving a little bit of stem showing. And that's so when I start wrapping, first I gotta actually orient the hackle the right way. So this is the shiny side of the hackle. And this is the dull side. You can tell it's actually a lot lighter. That's the side I actually want to be facing me, because this fly has the hackles facing forward. And so I'm going to tie this with a little bit of the stem showing and tie in that hackle. And then for the top of the fly, since this is a size 12 hook, I'm going to use about 3 peacock curls. And you don't use very much of the peacock curl, so I'm using just the strung. I am going to break off the tips, and I'm going to tie those in. I want to make sure these are on top, because when I fold this forward, if they're wrapped around the sides of the hook, then when you fold that forward, they're going to split and make it look bad. So I want to tie these in and make sure they stay on top of the hook. I'm just doing that with tension on the material. I'll move those back out of the way. And I'm just going to wrap mine forward at this point, because the next step is to put on dubbing. And I think that would be, I'll just do that at the time instead of, so now we're both at the same point. So Mick, if you want to go ahead and probably finish out your fly.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to do a little half hitch to lock it in there. And then I'll use my bobbin cradle and hold that. And now I'm going to wrap in the mylar. I'm doing touching turns. Call that good right there. Okay, as I said before, I don't use the peacock
Right.
in the top, so Sharpie, I just add a black back. And so it's a little bit kind of washed out a little bit, but that's about what I have. Now this is going to be a little bit different, where people are like, what is he doing? But I'm going to whip finish this. And even though I still have the hackle there, I'm getting rid of the thread. So at this point, if anyone uses the Solares UV, this is where I will put that on. And this is where it gets its durability.
Wow.
And the crazy thing is, I just remembered my UV light is upstairs. My wife needed it. So I'm gonna have to run up and get that.
That's okay. While we're waiting, John will sing
Yeah.
us a song.
Or if you want to start tying yours a little bit more, you can too.
Okay, I could go ahead and dub the body then, since your
go
body
for
is
it.
complete.
I'd be more than happy to sing a Japanese lullaby.
Oh, that's okay. So again, I'm going to take some of this, that's too big for the camera. I'm going to take some of this it's light Cahill. It's just a real cream colored, super fine dubbing. It's a dry fly dubbing. Very, very fine. So I'm just going to dub that onto the thread, just kind of dry. And I'm going to have a little bit of bulk, so I'm going to kind of wrap this back towards the back. And that's about where I want it to end. I'm going to add a little bit more dubbing. And so I'm going to do it back here so hopefully you can see it. I'm just taking this super fine dubbing and just kind of in my fingers, I'm just pulling it to kind of align those fibers. And then I hold that in my right hand and I just pull 3 hairs and some air. And that dubs on there pretty easily. So I want this body to have a little bit of bulk to it. I don't want to just clump a bunch of dubbing on there and then it starts coming off. So that's
Mike,
why
are
I'm
you
gonna
using dubbing wax on that tonight?
I'm not. And so you can use dubbing wax with this super fine dubbing, since it's so long and so small of diameter of those little fibers. As long as you're using very small amounts, you can twist it onto the thread very easily. And even with my thumb arthritis, this isn't too painful. And so right about, that's a pretty good thickness so far. I'm going to need just a little bit more here to get all the way to the front. So you can see also, if you used a turkey, if you had a cream colored turkey round, those wing quill feathers, and you grab about, I saw Ed's story tying this fly. He said to use 5 of those turkey barbs, I guess, from the turkey round to build the body with. And he just wraps them forward, just like I'm doing with this dubbing. I'm going to go just a little bit further to where I'm just about an eye length back from the eye. So I want a little bit more in here. And I should be able to end it right about there. So I, too, will do a little half hitch here. And so now I've got my peacock here and my hackle, and my body is wrapped. So now we'll see if Mick has his light yet.
Yes, I do.
He
So
does.
sorry about that.
No problem at all. It worked out perfectly.
Yep. So again, I'm just going to make sure I got some of that UV on. And again, this is what helps it.
So you haven't cured that yet?
No, I have not.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
That's why I'd cut off. So now I get to right about there. I won't blind you guys, but here comes the UV light. You actually see it cook off a little bit there. That's what makes it a little bit easier now for your participants.
Wow.
Because it's nice, a little bit wispy, not too full, but will sit in the film just fine. It has two red hot spots and then the blue and then the fake backing. But now that it's cured in there, all the teeth in the world might drop off some of the individual bristles
Right.
and cut through your mane and unfurl it. So that's going to be, even though it has a UV on it, it's still light enough where it'll sit in the film. And
So that's the Bennett Blue.
that's the Bennett Blue. And I put a couple red hot spots on it. And basically how you said it, this works really well to dry. And then if you don't get a hit, you could strip it in just under the surface. One of my friends there does use the full sink line with this, and he casts straight out, and then he starts stripping it with the full sink down low, and he does very well with this. And that would be with either Crackleback, but he does like this Bennett Blue.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Yep, I'm going to get rid of that little tail.
An improvement on the original.
Yep, it's a little bit more durable.
Right.
You know, for Bennett, it's stocked, and if you start getting a hot spot, they'll tear up your fly pretty quick. So this makes it a little bit more durable. Definitely not as pretty as the original, but this fishes well, and it's a different take on it. So this could be a different way you might want to show a different way of doing the Crackleback.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to take my peacock herl and fold it over the back. And then just take the first wrap and wrap it over the top, and just make sure that everything laid along the top. And that's the Crackleback portion of it. I'm just going to kind of trap that peacock herl in and then cut it off. And I can use that for probably 3 more of these. You only really end up using about 3/4 of an inch of this herl. And then, since I left some of that stem, when I start to wrap this hackle, it shouldn't wrap a bunch of fibers facing toward the back. So I start to get it pretty clean. I'm going to do kind of a clean wrap at the back and then come up on that dubbing. And Ed said 5 wraps. I don't think that's critical. To me, if you want to fish this more as a dry fly, which I often do, you might want maybe 7 wraps. If you want to fish it more as a wet fly, then, 5 or less wraps. It's like I got about maybe close to 6. I'm going to tie off that hackle and then trap that in good. Wrap over it and in front. And then I'll clip that out of the way. I'm going to use a trick I learned from Al here, and I'm just going to make a little V in my scissors and just push that forward to break the hackle stem. That way you don't clip all your hackles in the front there. Now, the Crackleback, as you saw on Mix, the reason that you face the dull side of the hackle towards you is so that the hackles, as you wrap them, they'll cant forward. Of course, that makes it real difficult to use a standard whip finisher to wrap your head. So in this case, it's a really good candidate for just using a half hitch tool to finish off the head. So I did 2 half hitches, and then I'll do a double wrap like that. And 1 more double wrap. And then that's pretty much the equivalent of a whip finish. And I'll come in here, clip that thread, And that's about as original of a crackleback as you can get.
That looks really good, Mike. Very nice.
All right, so the next fly we're going to do, and we'll vote at the end, because I think with the form you need to fill out, you need to actually vote on both of them before you can submit it. So we'll save the voting toward the end. So we're going to do the micro woolly bugger. And we're going to do this in 2 different ways as well. The micro woolly bugger is basically just a variant. It's usually tied with different materials, is the only reason you call it a variant. To accommodate the smaller size, but it's really just the original woolly bugger in a smaller size. So here's an example of what this is similar to what I'll be tying tonight. Rendition. I won't be using the rib, but it's basically a small version of a woolly bugger. And so I'm using the same size hook. This is a size 12. And if you do these down in 16 and 18, one of my favorite materials for the body of this fly is peacock curl. But Mick, since you're the guest, you want to go first again, or you want me to go first?
Sure. I could go first.
Okay.
Mine's a little bit different. You can kind of see there's 2 different hooks. He's using a standard hook where I'm using a 60-degree jig hook. So it will eventually fish in that configuration. I use that because you could fish it as a woolly bugger, where you could use it as a strip it in, or since it's a micro, you could actually use it under an indicator. So that's why I've swapped to this hook. You could use it then either way. I've done very well with this just sitting under an indicator, so the jig hook works. I just have a slotted tungsten bead green because I will be doing this in green. I have materials. I could actually go to a different view real quick. Okay. So I have these mini barred marabou that make kind of neat because it's got the barred colors. I've got the yellow and black. I could do it in orange, but I will be doing the olive and green today. And then, as you were saying, you could use either peacock or was it ostrich hurl as well. What I like using is a small stone fly chenille, again, barred green and black. And so I like the barred look, so I'll be using that as well. And then again, the same hackle that I was using before. So that's the materials I will be using. Now we'll get back to my video. Right now it's got a little bit of a weight. If you do want, you could actually use, and I'll do it for this demo, is using some 15 lead wire, and I'll just put a couple wraps in there. It'll give it a little bit weight if with the marabou sometimes it might not want to be the sink rate that you want. So I'll just put a few wraps in there. Again, this is only if you want, you don't have to, but I'm doing it for this demonstration. I'll just push that up. And so there is my weight. Again, that's up to you if you want to use it, depending on your fishing situation. Bring this back. Grab my green marabou. All right. I'm gonna bring it back to the other camera, but my integrated, so you can kind of see real quick. So here is the marabou that I'll be using. If I'm going to be tying a bunch of these, I'll actually start towards this tip and I will just continue to use this feather going through. So your first one, which I'm going to be using here, has a little bit too clean of a cut for me. So sometimes I'll just kind of pick at it with my thumb to kind of give it a, so it doesn't look like it's got a fresh haircut. But basically I'll start here and then cut it off. This next section would be for the next fly, and I'll just continue down, keeping the stem in because it's really not that thick on this. And then I could just use this feather, could easily do 4 flies. So coming back to that, I will now tie in the marabou. As I said, I'll cut this. And then again, I still have a full feather, and that would be used for the next 3 flies. I'm just going to keep that wrapped in. Next part. I'll be putting a couple materials in here. Here comes the hackle. Just like want to keep the stem out there so I could get a start on it before I go. And then the chenille.
Mick, if it's fair to ask a couple questions.
Sure.
So what size hook is that?
This is a size 12.
Okay.
It's model number, if I could even find it. Yes, it's model number 20 from Wholesale Fly Company, which is, if you've not heard, is going, they're retiring. So it sounds like one of my guys contacted them and to see if they will be selling off the company to someone else or help someone else get in touch with their person who makes the rare beads and all that. And it sounds like someone will be taking over. So it's their model 20 barbless. And the bead size is, real quick, where do I have that? That is a 2.5 millimeter, which is 3/32. Again, that usually is pretty good if you're in slow waters, but if it's going to be a little bit quicker waters and you want to get it to down, then you can put some wraps of the lead that I have in there. So
Right. And then one other question, that chenille, for the size hook, that looks pretty small. So what's that chenille you have?
the chenille is it's small stonefly chenille by Fly Fish Food.
Okay.
So let me
Small.
change small. Because this is the 12 that I have that I'm tying on right now is usually the biggest that I'll do on that. But here is the chenille. Usually the hook size I'll do is I'll even go to a 16 on this. But it still looks good with this. The chenille will look small on this, but then when you add the hackle to it, it'll kind of give it a little bit more of a body, and it'll kind of make up for the smaller chenille.
Excellent.
So I will call that quits. Sometimes
Okay.
if you wanted, you could use some pearl flash. I think I'm going to leave that off for now. There's a lot of materials in there, so this will be good for now.
All right. I'm going to wax my thread real quick here. and because I'm using Semperfly again.
Is that the Nano Silk?
Yes,
That is absolutely my favorite to tie
and
with.
they say, I saw something the other day that said that the nano silk and a lot of the gel spun, it's polyethylene. I thought it was polyester,
Polypropylene.
polypropylene.
Yeah.
Not to use your fly tying scissors because it'll dull them really quickly. So I may be in the market for a pair of scissors here pretty soon. But
Now, since you're using that, use the same trick that you did where you were cutting off the hackle on your crackle back. Make a
to
V and
make
push
the V
forward,
and then push
Yep.
forward.
and it will cut the nano silk perfect.
Now I will say, again, I hate to bash these guys, but the UTC GSP,
Yes.
this is a heavier thread. It's a 75 denier, where this says it's 50 denier. It's a little bit larger of a thread.
Yeah.
The color, you look at it on the spool, it looks like a nice olive. When you actually wrap it on there, it's really light color. And what you find out is that inside the bobbin tube, a lot of that color is a waxy film.
Yep.
So you can see on the spool how a lot of that wax is collected on the spool. This Semperfly, the color is in the thread, and it's
Yes.
not. It's. I love that stuff.
Yeah. It's by far my favorite. And the size that I like the most is the 18-aught, which is like 30 denier, which is super thin. So if you're trying to do dry flies, it doesn't build up a lot of like thread on your fly. It keeps it down. But even with that very thin diameter thread, you could almost still spin deer hair with it.
Right. I will say with this 12-aught thread, 50 denier, I have never broken it
Yeah.
on a fly. And 8-aught thread, I break all the time. 6-aught occasionally, but usually I'm angry when I'm tying at that point. But anyway, I'll just thread to the end of the shank here.
So Mike, I assume that means you don't want any 8-aught uni threads, huh?
No, I'll tell you what, it has its place. It really does.
I probably got about 60 spools of it here that are coming your way. So
I would say, we'll talk about this later, but let's keep them if they're good for the students and the participants. So probably 6-aught thread on most of the flies we'll use here, and some 8-aught thread just for them to practice with and learn that, what the differences are in tension and all that kind of stuff. But we'll talk about that. I'm going to go to my materials camera here real quick because I'm going to do this a little bit different. I'm going to try to put a little more light over here on the subject. For the tail, I'm not going to use marabou. I'm going to actually use the fluff from the base of one of these saddle hackles. And I do that on the smaller woolly buggers. It's just like marabou. It has the wispy fibers and everything. For a smaller woolly bugger, it's kind of hard to use any kind of crystal flash because it becomes too big for the fly. But again, they have a midge flash, and it's not just Cabela's that sells it. It's basically crystal flash in a smaller, much smaller diameter, and so you can use this in a smaller fly like this, size 12, 14, 16. For the hackle, I'm going to use again one of these. This is a Keo hackle. One of the multi-packs This one has like grizzly brown, dun, black. There's some white in there and some ginger. And in some of these kind of things, they're fairly cheap. Instead of buying a whole saddle of every color you want to tie flies with, that's a pretty good way to go. For the price of this, and I don't remember what I paid for it, but it wasn't much. You can get a lot of flies out of this pack, and there's all kinds of colors there. So I'm going to use one of those saddles for the hackle, and then for the body, I'm actually going to use ostrich pearl for the body. So like what Mick was doing, I'm going to switch cameras here.
I
Mike?
apologize for breaking in. I have to go to a meat tasting event. And I just want to thank everybody for what they're doing today. And I have a comment. If this is voting in the US, how many weeks do you wait for postal votes?
You can actually, if you look in the chat, you might be able to just vote on the first one and
Okay, right. All
Yeah.
right, we'll see you next week.
Okay,
and
Paul,
it
thanks
won't
for your,
take
Paul,
it won't take too long to get through the interwebs.
Okay.
But thanks for coming tonight, Paul. Good to see you.
and Paul had a comment too. He said, if you cut some aluminum foil, it can sharpen scissors.
Really.
I've never heard that one before, but I think I'll give it a try.
This is a standard hook with a 3/32 bead. I got these from Wapsie a long time ago. I also have a big bulk of them that I bought. But for tonight, and the way I normally use these things is without weight and without a bead. And a lot of times what I want to represent here is a damselfly nymph, or just a really small woolly bugger presentation. So for the tail, like I said, I'm just going to grab one of these let me cut the nasty off the bottom of it. Just going to grab a one of these saddle hackles that I bought in bulk. It's an olive color. And if you look at the base of that, you can see just a bunch of stuff that really looks like marabou. And so I'm going to grab about 9 or 5 of these. He's already gone. I shouldn't say that, but actually it ends up being, maybe half an inch of that stem. And those are all lined up. I'm just going to gather those together. And so that's going to be my tail. And so, if you were tying down to a smaller size, 16s, 18s, you could use just less fibers for a tail. And then if you hold on to the ends of those and then just kind of strip like this, you can pull a lot of those marabou fibers off. And then you have a smaller tie-in point for the for those marabou fibers. So that looks like a little bit weak of a tail. I'm going to take a few more fibers and add to that. Maybe a few more. Again, I'll grab them by the tips here and then just kind of strip a lot of those little fine hairs off of there to make it less to tie in, but I'm still tying it in by those little stems. That gives me a little bushier of a tail. I'll go back to the end of the shank. And then for my body material, I'm going to use one of these from an ostrich hurl, from an ostrich plume, I guess. Just one of the hurls from this package. And toward the base of it, it starts to get a little short and a little kind of raggedy. So I'm going to cut maybe 1.5 inches off of that to where I still have probably 3 inches there. Strip off a few of those at the base and tie that in. So that's going to actually be my body. And then I like to use a kind of a dun colored hackle. So I'm going to tie that in here at the base. Now on a standard woolly bugger, you would tie the hackle in at the front and use a ribbing to wrap forward. When they start getting small like this, a ribbing sometimes is a little bit too much. But I've got all my materials tied in, and I'm just going to tie this toward the front and pull too hard and bend the hook. I didn't bend the hook, but I moved it in my vise. So I'm going to leave that right there and actually tie in a half hitch, because I will use rotary for the rest of it. So I've got my body material and my hackle all ready to go. So Mick, you want to finish yours out?
Sure. One of the things that you brought up that I was like, yeah, I forgot to kind of mention that what I'm trying to make this look like. Again, I consider Bennett Spring my home waters, and it's my favorite place to fish. And in that spring is a type of fish called a mottled sculpin. And basically we call that trout candy out there. They can get pretty big, several inches, but then you see the smaller ones about 1 inch long, and that's what I'm trying to imitate right now. The trout love picking those off, and so that's what I'm trying to imitate here, is a mottled sculpin. So just a little ground fish that almost looks like a tadpole, and I'm just going to throw a half hitch in there for now. But so mine's not of an insect, but more of a fly or of a fish. So the next part I will do, I'll put in the chenille and just do touching wraps.
Mick, I would think a muddler minnow would be a better imitation of a sculpin, wouldn't you?
That would work. I've had really good luck with this though. I had this under an indicator a couple Saturdays ago, and so I was trying to fish it as if it was just like a nymph or something. So I just kind of looked for the indicator to drop a little bit. This thing got hit so hard it actually scared me, because I wasn't prepared for it. I mean, I will be honest, it's scary. It just completely took me by shock on how hard it got hit, and it just ran on it. And it was a decent sized trout, but these things really do love to eat their sculpins, and the mother minnow would do really good as well.
I would say to tie a size 12 muddler minnow would be kind of hard. I'd have a little trouble with that. So
Yeah.
this
And
is
again,
I tie what's called a mini muddler. In fact, a good friend of mine, Don Peterbaugh, showed me the pattern. And I'll have to do that some night. It's on the size, anything down from a 10 to a 12 to a 14.
yeah, this is size, this 12 is about the biggest I'll go. But the good news at Bennett, they hit pretty much all sizes with that. So again, as I said, some of those are in the size length of about 6 inches, but these smaller ones are good for even the rainbow trout. The brown trout can't stay off this. So right now I'm just putting a little bit of Sally Hansen's on the thread, and I'm going to use that to lock in. And then I will lip finish. And then if I want, I can kind of, if I think the tail's too much or looks too clean, I could pinch some of that off with my thumb to give it more of a natural look instead of too much of a clean haircut. Zoom out a little bit. So that's how it would sit as it would go. But there you could kind of see a little bit more of the colors of it. So that is my version of a micro booger.
That's beautiful. I like the barbed marabou.
Yeah, everything's pretty much barbed, the marabou and then the chenille. As I said, it's
Oh yeah, that's 2-color.
yeah, it's several colors, and then it's got some of the gold and yellow in there that when you come down at Bennett and you see the little sculpin running around, this is a pretty good imitation of it. So that's it.
Excellent. And with that weight, I bet it, brings it down real, down
Yeah.
deep and easy.
Yeah, I almost fish it like a nymph, where I'm looking for that within 6 inches of the bed of the stream under an indicator. And if I'm using a nymph, you see the little taps when they hit it. But usually with this, they hit it kind of hard where your indicator gets buried, which kind of more resembles a bluegill with the bobber. But the trout really love their sculpin. So when they hit this, usually I watch the bobber or indicator drop completely underwater. So it works it's a good pattern, especially during the summertime.
Excellent. Thank you, Mick. I'm going to try doing it this way where we, whoops, I did it wrong. Where we change the spotlight. All right. So for my version, for the body, I'm going to, so I did a half hitch on the thread there. I'll go ahead and take this thread. Now I moved my, you can see my bobbin cradle in the back. I'm actually going to leave my bobbin where it normally is as far as how much thread is hanging off of it. And I'm just going to hang it on the bobbin cradle. A lot of people stretch their thread out and hang their thread over the bobbin cradle. Let me actually turn it over there. Al did a thing on this a while back. If you just hang your bobbin on there, instead of stretching your thread out and hanging your thread over it, the thread's ready to use. You don't have to like rethread the spool once you get back there. So I'm going to go ahead and hold this ostrich hurl and avoid the point of the hook here. And I'm actually using this to wrap my body. I'm going to put this in a clip so it's out of my way, stays out of my way. Starting to get a little short here. I'm gonna do this by hand for the rest of it. Ostrich hurl, the stem is actually kind of delicate. About the same as peacock hurl. But the hackle is gonna go through there, and let me make a couple wraps here before I adjust that hook. The hackle is going to go through there and kind of counter wrap that. So I'll just kind of stroke that to get anything that was tight underneath out of the way. And then snip off that excess. So that's for my body. Then for the hackle, I'm using a dun color. And I'll just palmer that through that ostrich hurl. Now at the front, I want to make sure I make a couple of good turns here, because just like in a woolly bugger, there's a concern that if you spiral the hackle and then you pull it through the water, that'll actually naturally add a little bit of twist to your tippet and cause your tippet to twist. So that's why they usually do a couple of good turns at the front of a woolly bugger. So stroke most of those back if I can, and tie in a head. And then I'll use a whip finisher on this one. And pull that tight. And I'll try the V, break the thread, and to break the hackle. Most people try to cut the hackle as close as possible to the head. If you leave just a little bit of stem, the fish isn't going to care, and it's not going to come unwrapped. It's going to give you some strength. And then I too will use Sally Hansen's because it's only fair. And add just a drop to the head there. And that's a very basic micro bugger. Again, you'll notice the difference with Mick's. His was heavily weighted. If I was going into the bottom of a pool, a deeper pool, lake fishing and trying to get deep, I would use Mick's version, of course. I'd definitely add some weight. I think that's a great idea. Did I get off camera here? Sorry about that. The way I usually fish this is very shallow. And if I want this to be a damselfly nymph, which if you kind of imagine the long, slender body once this is wet, a damselfly will crawl along the bottom, eating whatever he can eat. And then when they want to hatch, they rise to the surface. And then in about the top 3 feet of the water column, they swim back to shore where they can crawl up the stem of a reed or some kind of a weed or a log or a rock or something. And that's where they'll do their metamorphosis, crawl out of their shell or whatever. So for a damselfly nymph, you really want to fish it in the top 3 feet of the water, and pretty much all the way across a lake or a pond, any still water. For anywhere you'd fish a woolly bugger, if you can fish one in a size 12, 14, 16, again, if I was doing this in an 18, I'd use peacock herl for the body. That's just dynamite. I mean, I've used these for crappie, where you're sight fishing for crappie. I've used them for trout in the Black Hills. This and the midge patterns were my favorites in the Black Hills. But that's my version of the micro woolly bugger.
Looks very nice.
So
I love it, Mike. That's
for the
great.
vote, let's put our cracklebacks up on the camera. And I will side by side us again. There we go. And then the way Rosenbauer and Flagler do it is they do the rotation thing.
I don't get a side by side, Mike.
You don't?
No, just a second.
Dave Hauser, do you see side by side?
Yes, I do.
Yep, I do too.
Okay.
Oh, I see what's wrong. Never mind.
All right.
Never mind. There we go.
Mine isn't as true rotary as Mick's is.
Yeah.
Mine jumps way up, and but that's the FC Crackleback. So we're going to vote here in a minute. We got 3 people voting, so it shouldn't be a tie. And then go ahead and put your micro woolly bugger up there. Zoom out a little bit so my rotary doesn't make it go off the screen. And that's the micro bugger. So if you go in the chat and I guess it's the bottom link there. So the second link.
Yeah, the
Click
first
on that
one
and
is
make
to
your
the
vote.
results. Yeah, the first one's to the results. The bottom one is the one you
Oh,
want.
okay. I gotcha.
The tires can vote too, you know.
Oh, the tires can vote? Is that
Yeah.
true?
Of course.
Well, I'll go ahead and vote, I guess.
David Jacobs, I didn't get to welcome you. How was Denver?
Denver was actually a blast, even though I only was able to do 2 days rather than 3, but it was a lot of fun.
How's your brother?
Tim Flagler said, tell everybody hi.
Oh,
We'll
boy.
see him. Yeah, we'll see him. No, that's Kelly Gallup's going to be here, but yeah.
Yeah.
How's your brother?
Good question. Stable, I
Is
guess.
he-
I think he's stopped progressing, so I don't know.
Yeah. Did he enjoy the show or did he get to go?
Oh, it was the highlight of his year so far.
Oh,
Good.
He had an
that's excellent.
incredible time.
Good. I've got to
Yep.
get out there and see him, I guess, one of these days.
Well, come to Merritt.
Oh, is he coming to Merritt?
Oh yeah, I was there last year too.
I'll be there.
June 3rd through the 10th.
Okay, I'll be there.
Yeah. So how do we vote, guys?
Go over to the chat,
Yeah, I'm in the chat.
see where it
Okay.
says wrong link, try this one. About the third
It
text from the
says John
bottom.
Wright to everyone. Wrong link. Try this one. Click on that link, and that should take you to a form where you pick which one you think is the best.
Click on John Wright.
So where it says John Wright to everyone, below that it should say wrong link. Try this one. Right
the
below
chat?
that is some blue text.
To everyone, okay.
Right below that should say wrong link. Try this one. And there's HTTPS
No, I don't
docs.
get that. I don't see that.
Really?
You know, put it in there again, or let me see if I can find it.
I'm seeing it unless I did it wrong.
You're
I can
seeing
just
it?
tell you.
Yeah, if you can't find it, just tell us.
First one, I'm going to give a slight edge to Mike. And the second one, the Woolly Buggers, I'm going to give the edge to Mick. I love 60-degree jig style flies, particularly
I.
for what we're doing with the participants for Healing Waters. So, yeah. So is it a tie? Yeah, in my
It's
mind.
pretty much a tie.
They're all good. And they're all purposeful, which I think is the most important.
Right. And I think more than the competition, I think that's what we were trying to show was there's a lot of different ways you can do these two flies. If you look on the interwebs, there's a whole lot of different ways to do the crackleback. My favorite way, of course, was to watch Ed Story doing it. And he used the turkey quill for his body. But you know, it's the goal that Mick and I wanted to do was just these are two flies that could be used a lot in the Midwest, and depending on whether you wanted to go deep or shallow, whether you wanted to go Bennett Springs or original, or you know, there's a lot of different ways to look at fly tying.
Yep.
And so that was the goal.
Oh, sure.
Seems like every time we do these, I learn something. Even, you know, the one I was like with the bobbin holder, you know, I was like, yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense because every time I tie, I kind of pull the thread out and it's dangling and I got to reel it back in. It's like, all right, that's better.
Well, I tell you, you know, since I started on these Zoom meetings 2 years ago now, and then started with Al Beatty's Friday night meetings, I guess I've caught the bug because I've been tying flies for 2 or 3 hours a day now for the last month or so. And I've got a lot of flies. But what I've started to do now is go down small for Bennett Springs, Mick.
Yeah.
That's why I'm tying these 16s, 18s, and 20s is for down there. I'm not just tying Tenkara flies either. I'm tying a bunch of others that I'm going to bring down with me. So,
Well,
Yeah.
if you look at that Bennett blue that Mick tied, if you have any kind of tinsel and you have a blue Sharpie is probably easier to find than blue tinsel.
yeah.
You could color that blue. That's what the guy, I watched one guy doing what he was calling a Bennett blue. He did colored it blue, but then he did the peacock curl over the back. But I like that idea using a Sharpie to black the back of it too. It just takes that, you know, peacock curl is a sensitive, you know, delicate fiber to tie with. Tie in with a Sharpie, that's not going to get cut.
Does it make any difference on the hackle? What colors you use, Mick? Do you think down there at Bennett?
Not really. For the most
Okay.
part, they're looking at, you know, the profile. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's even why I don't use the peacock hurl. because that's usually on top, which, you know, this is a top, and this is what the fish are usually seeing. And they usually don't see that peacock curl that much. So it's more
Yeah.
for, you know, the fishermen. And that's why I've kind of pulled that out, because that's the profile they're seeing is right there. And the peacock curl would be on the complete other side. That might be helpful in trying to straighten out the fly and sit like this, but with having the whole bend of the hook in there, they usually ride, you know, right side up like this.
How small do you tie them?
I will go to a 16 on a crackleback.
Okay.
And then like 18, 20, like I kind of had the zebra mid up there.
Yeah.
That was a size, that was a 20.
That was a 20 that you tied, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
was usually
The smallest I've ever tied a crackleback is probably 18.
Okay.
Like I said, orange, yellow, red. That's what I always did. But when I started researching a little bit, they talked about the cream color, you know. That's why I did it tonight. But yeah, it's a little bit of contrast. And that's, I think, it's not that this represents a certain insect or anything. I think it's contrast. That's why we put hot spots in bright orange and chartreuse.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like any insect, but it's contrast that the fish can see easily.
Yeah.
And so a crackleback to me is the back and the body, whatever it is. Like in mix, he's got the red, blue, black. All he needs is white to be America.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's, I'll do the white hackle next time.
Yeah, white hackle. But you know, it's a contrast, and it catches their eye. So then they come over there and they look at it and they either refuse it, or they say that looks buggy enough for me to eat it. And it's a regional favorite. That crackleback is like huge, and it's not just Missouri. You know, it's Arkansas. I think I was seeing somebody in Ohio. Just a lot of the Midwest, you know, where there's trout streams, they really, the yellow Sally, if it's in that pale color, but really it's an attractor in that blue, or you could do like a royal, put some peacock curl in the body of it with the red waist. You could do you know, black and red and make it like a bibio. You can, I mean, you could do anything you want as far as colors and color combinations. But I think there's a lot to be said in contrast for trout.
For sure.
Well, I may have to tie some for the Bennett trip.
So the results, I guess, are crackleback. It looks like everybody went with the traditional,
Yep.
but the micro woolly bugger is 50-50.
Yeah.
Which I think is appropriate. I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like we said, it's different ways to tie it, but for different reasons,
For sure.
you know.
And that's the beauty of fly tying. You know, you tie it whatever way you want to tie it based on what you need it to do.
My thing was, if you throw that crackleback over a bluegill bed, and it'll float for a while, but if it does start to sink, it's not going to sink to the bottom like a rock. It's going to sink really slow.
Yeah.
And so if you're in 2 or 3 feet of water and that thing's slowly going down there, it's not going to take very long. It may be one of the smaller ones that are trying to steal from the beds, but as it starts to sink in that water column, they're going to take it. Same with crappie. I haven't tried that for crappie. I usually go for like a bugger kind of thing, or a streamer. But I'm sure if they saw that slowly drifting down toward their nest, they'd take it